I would watch some of boys' programmes, sometimes because in girls' ones there's not much action and I kind of like action.
I would watch some of the boys' programmes if they were good. Because that doesn't make any sense at all.
Hello again, and welcome to this year's Creative Keynote with Chris Riddell. It's been said that men can't multitask. Well, Chris Riddell is certainly an exception to that thought. He's a highly regarded illustrator, popular author, celebrated political cartoonist, and is currently going into his second year as Children's Laureate. He's passionate about the act of creation, politically committed, and currently meeting thousands of young people from every background across the UK in his role as Laureate. I was warned about this. When appointed to the 2-year post, he said, "I want to show how much fun you can have drawing. Parents and children can draw together as a wonderful shared activity. I want to bring drawing back to the basics, make it about the pleasure that it can afford, and remove the notion that it's some kind of precious or difficult activity. It's another way of telling a story." Chris displayed artistic talent from an early age and was encouraged by his mother. She gave him paper and pen to keep him quiet during his father's sermons. As a child, he admired the work of John Tenniel, the first illustrator of Alice in Wonderland, and W. Heath Robinson. He says that he grew up in drafty vicarages in Yorkshire, Bristol, and Worcestershire before moving to the mean streets of Brixton, South London. He studied art in Epsom, Surrey, and then Brighton, where he was taught by Raymond Briggs. Chance meetings, a lot of luck, and a serious sketchbook habit led to a career in picture books in the 80s, political cartooning for The Independent, New Statesman, Economist, and The Observer in the 90s, and co-authorship of a best-selling fantasy novel series called The Edge Chronicles in the noughties. His solo work includes the Goth Girl series, the Ottoline series, and the picture books The Emperor of Absurdia and Alienography. Can't say that. The first Goth Girl novel won the Costa Children's Book Award in 2013. He also received the Hay Festival Medal for Illustration last year. He's known especially for his distinctive line drawings with their clever caricature, fascinating detail, and often enchanting fantasy elements. He's worked widely with a variety of collaborators, including Paul Stewart, Neil Gaiman, and Russell Brand. He won the prestigious Kate Greenaway Medal for the first time in 2002 for Pirate Diary, and again in 2004 for Jonathan Swift's Gulliver. But this year, he is the first person to score a hat-trick, a third time Kate Greenaway for The Sleeper and The Spindle. Sinead Jakes, chair of the judges, said, "His illustrations lift this retold tale into high art, offering sumptuous pleasures on every page. The more one looks at his pictures, the more one notices subtlety and complexity, the clever use of such a limited palette, the daring use of solid black areas, no space is wasted. Some 15 years after Chris first took home a Kate Greenaway medal, he shows no signs of slowing down. He remains a thrilling, prolific, and prestigious talent." Finally, Chris appeared on Blue Peter's World Book Day show in March to announce this year's winners of the Blue Peter Book Awards and to give the winning authors their trophies. However, he was surprised when he also received a gold Blue Peter badge for his services to children's books and illustration. Chris said, "This is a brilliant surprise and a very well-kept secret. I'm thrilled. I will wear my gold badge with pride." As you can see by this illustration, as you can see, Chris was very proud and drew in his characteristic witty style his pleasure in getting the badge. Well, I think it's time I handed over to Chris so you can meet him in person. Will you please give a huge CMC welcome to Chris Riddell?
My goodness, I've never been applauded for wearing a badge before. That's just fantastic. This can only go to my head. It's terrible. When I became Children's Laureate, my very good friend Heike, who comes from Germany, was very excited. And she rushed up to me, gave me a great big hug and said, "Chris, I've just found out that you've become Children's Laundrette." Such a lovely moment. And so now all my friends refer to me as the Children's Laundrette, which actually sort of helps with the head sort of swelling. So it is wonderful to be here, and what I would like to do is talk to you a little bit about sort of my experiences, where I've come from creatively, show some pictures, and do some drawing. I do enjoy these machines, these visualizers where you can draw. I'm never going to become a hand model. I think that much is clear. But that said, with a charcoal pencil, I can draw as I talk, hopefully. I'd like to tell you a bit about the sort of year I've been having, and then I want to talk about sketchbooks and how cathartic sketchbooks can be. And I'm going to speak with feeling. I didn't know I was going to do this until last Thursday. Anyway, let's show some pictures. I think I'm going to get up now and wander over here. I'm told this is a very good place to stand, so I'm not in any way. And then I can look up at what I'm going to show you. So this is a little story. Now this works very well with year threes. So bear with me. Bear with me. Now this is a true story. This is the true story about why I decided to become an illustrator. My dad was a vicar, so every Sunday I had to go to church. I think that's part of canon law, I think. My father's sermons were very, very long. So to keep me quiet, my mum gave me these. I think it's very important to talk to your year threes about what these are. It's not a video game. It doesn't require batteries, doesn't need to be recharged. Bit of pencil sharpening, maybe, occasionally, but these are the most magical tools in the world, pencil and paper. While my dad talked about loving thy neighbour and peace on earth, I was drawing pictures of castles on fire and knights getting their heads chopped off. It was great fun. Yeah. And my best friend in church was Mrs. Stock. She was about 103. And my mother said to me just the other day, she said, "Chris, you know that story you tell about Mrs. Stock in church?" I said, yes. She said, "I just worked out that actually back then, in the mid-60s, Mrs. Stock was probably the age you are now." I'm 54. Thank you. Mrs. Stock kept a small leather purse in her handbag, and during the sermon, she'd take it out and quietly unzip it and give me wine gums. Very, very profound experience. Proustian, I might say. In return, at the end of the service, I gave Mrs. Stock my drawing, however inappropriate. It was a deal we had. It was just something we did together. It was great. It was then that I decided what I wanted to do when I grew up. I wanted to draw pictures and be given wine gums. True story. True story. I was at my local bookshop on Saturday. A little girl called Mabel came up. She reached into her pocket. She was very, very pleased, and she handed me a tube of wine gums. It was lovely. So my plan is working. I do work for wine gums. It's true. So I'm often asked by year threes, what do I do all day? That wonderful show. What do artists do all day? What do illustrators do all day? Well, I thought it was time that I committed this to paper, so I could sort of share the quite frankly, the excitement of my everyday life. So this is an actual day in the real life of Chris Riddell with a few imaginary bits added. I get up at 5:32 sharp every morning and do my Canadian Air Force exercises. Keeps me in trim. Thank you. Except on the days when I don't. Rather frequent. My butler, McStewart, helps me dress. Very important. Very Downton Abbey. Unless I do it myself. Do you know, I went to one of those Comic-Con conferences. Very interesting. I went along. As I entered, I was almost knocked over by what can only be described as a stampede of Disney princesses. I was actually in an unseemly clinch with Belle from Beauty and the Beast. It's a huge confection in meringue, sort of yellow meringue. They'd seen a boy band member just beyond me, and they'd all stampeded towards him. They weren't interested in me at all. But it was an extraordinary experience. And then I was asked repeatedly through the day of, what have you come as? What have you? Everyone was dressed as something. There were minions. I suspect they were engineering students, but there were minions in these big sort of little sort of slots where they were looking out. And so I thought it was very amusing. I said, I've come as the supply teacher at Hogwarts. Not a smile, just pitying looks. Just pitying looks, honestly. Breakfast is always served in the Chinese drawing room, which is very inconvenient because I don't have a Chinese drawing room. I then commute to work in a hot air balloon, which is quite inconvenient because I work at the bottom of my garden. So this is where I live in Brighton. I live in a detached house. It's great when the screaming starts, that's good. I have a balcony along the front, which is slightly weird because the balcony is very close to the road, so you can't use that balcony because it looks like you're snooping on pedestrians walking past. I used to have a hedge in front of my house. It suffered some strange horticultural disease. Not quite sure what it was, but whenever it rained, the bush smelt of cat's pee. Like really strongly, acrid cat's pee. I think it was some fungal thing, I don't know what it was. Very embarrassing. In the end, I had to have it cut down and replanted. I enjoy telling the year threes this. And it's now growing up, it doesn't smell of cat's pee anymore, that's great. Now, at my back garden, there's my garden path. I can go down my garden path, turn the corner and go into my studio, which is a converted coach house at the bottom of my garden. And it's nice and quiet down there. It's screened by sort of trees and bushes at the bottom. So when I work, I sort of get up in the morning, come downstairs to the kitchen, make myself a cup of coffee, read The Guardian, make myself another cup of coffee, read The Guardian some more, read G2, very good. Another cup of coffee, sports section, that's good. Then I decide to go to work, so I open my kitchen door and I walk down my garden path. And I sort of stop halfway down the garden path and decide to go back inside and get dressed. Have another cup of coffee, and then my wife comes out and says, get to work. So, I get up, I do my commute. My commute down the garden path, disappear into the bushes at the bottom, turn the corner, go into my studio, and that's where I work. It's wonderful. It's a sort of ambition, I think, for a lot of self-employed people to be able to work at the bottom of the garden. A summer or so ago, my daughter, who is at Manchester University studying illustration, no idea why, but anyway, she's there. So she came back with her friends from uni, her new friends they hadn't visited before. They were sunbathing. It was a lovely sunny day, and they were all sort of sunbathing. And I came out of my studio to walk back inside to make a cup of tea, and I emerged from the bushes, and Katie's friend screamed. I went red, obviously. I proceeded along the garden path while I heard Katie say to her friends, oh, don't mind him, that's just my dad. That was it. No other explanation. Not my father, the illustrator, who works at the bottom of his garden. No, that was just my dad. So now Katie's friends think that her father is this strange man who lurks in the bushes on sunny days. On the pretext. Yeah, honestly. I spend all morning doing imaginary work. very, very tough. Have a short break for lunch. And then do some more imaginary work in the afternoon. That is my life. I then return home to my wife, Princess Joanna of Norfolk. I know, yes. She likes that slide, actually. That's got approval. And I now, whenever I refer to her on social media, it's Princess Joanna of Norfolk. And my 3 children, Derek, Phoebe, and Nugent, they don't like that slide, and those aren't their real names, obviously. I changed them for comedy purposes. William, when I call him Derek, whatever, Dad, he's so cool. Katie, when I call her Phoebe, she just gives me that look. So, really, Dad, it's not grown up, it's not clever. Just stop it. And then when I call Jack Nugent, he gets furious and chases me around the house, and sort of wrestles me to the ground. It's a thing we have. It's just And Rosie, my invisible dog. There she is. Invisible dogs, I always say to the year 3s, great, get an invisible dog. They're really low maintenance. Great to take for walks with you. They do tricks that only you can see. Invisible dogs, they're the future. Yeah. So if we now this is going to get to an interesting bit. Now, if we can go to the visualizer. Oh, there I am, the children's laundrette. Now comes to we come to the sort of illustrated part of my lecture. Now, when I post things on social media, on Instagram and stuff, the thing that gets most hits are pictures of my sharpened pencils. I know, honestly. Anyway, they're very sharp, is all I'm saying. Now, I was taught by Raymond Briggs, and at Brighton Art School. I graduated in 1984, and it's a very interesting sort of phenomenon that I've actually encountered in later life. It's an art school phenomenon, and I was just the same. When I was at art school, I knew everything. I just knew everything. I was taught by these people. Now, Raymond was different. Raymond was wonderful, inspirational, but basically I knew it. I was brilliant. I just was brilliant. And I had it mapped out. I had a career plan. It's important to have a career plan. And so my career plan involved, I was very, very into Gormenghast, the Gormenghast trilogy by Mervyn Peake. Loved that extraordinary sort of Gothic novel, sort of written with a sort of painterly sense of view. So I decided. Have I told you I was really brilliant? Anyway, I decided what I was going to do. My plan was to illustrate Gormenghast in charcoal on very, very large bits of paper, the largest I could find. Sort of, A1 might have had a frieze of Gormenghast Castle on A0. Really big, sort of rolled up on charcoal. I thought that was good, I was going to go up to London, and I was going to choose, audition, basically, the publishers lucky enough to publish my work. That was my plan. So I went to London. I rented a lovely sort of house with some friends, student friends of mine, in what I felt was metropolitan London. It was actually Catford. And the glamour. So I went to London. I went to London to show my work to publishers. It was going to be a great thing. And I went along to various publishers, went in, I was guided in to their offices. I unfurled my charcoal drawings, my great big charcoal drawings. Clouds of charcoal dust went up in the air. And, the designers would get that slightly sort of hunted look in their eyes. And they'd say, don't call us, we'll call you. And I would leave. And they never did. And I did this for quite a while. And then it sort of slowly dawned on me that I might not be as brilliant as I thought I was. You know, that little inkling, just this little voice, oh dear. I went into a bookshop, I started looking at different sort of picture books, thought I'd better do some research, and I started to see books published by a certain publisher that I liked the look of. It was a publisher called Anson Press, and I thought, right, I'll go along and see Anson Press, see what happens. So I phoned up, and they said, oh, do come in and show your work. And I came in with my charcoal drawings. I was ushered into this great big office, which made me nervous. And in I went, and there was a man sitting behind a great big desk, even more nervous. He had the biggest, bushiest eyebrows I'd ever seen. Very nervous by this point. I think my voice was beginning to go, you know, getting slightly high-pitched and squeaky and quavery, you know, that little tremolo you get in your voice as you try to talk calmly. I got mesmerised by this man's eyebrows because they went up and down as he talked, and I sort of just followed them up and down. And then the thing that made me more nervous than anything was his voice. He had this wonderful stentorian sort of voice with a sort of German accent. And he looked at my work as I unfurled. He said, it is obvious to me that you can draw. You've been taught to draw. This much is clear. I said, thank you. He said, but... And then he asked me this question. He asked me this question that no other publisher had asked me, no designer, no one in the industry had asked me. He said, because I was an illustrator, I did pictures. He said, but where are your stories? And I panicked. And I said, I've got a story, but I left it at home. And he said, bring it in tomorrow. I want to read this story of yours. And I said, yes, okay, thank you very much. And I left in a panic. And I got outside, and I had this moment, existential moment, where I thought, I can either leave Catford, return to Brighton, disappear, the man with the eyebrows will never find me, or I can write a story. And I sat down that night, and I dredged up from the very depths of my soul a story about a creature that lives under a little boy's bed and comes out and decides to sleep in, asks whether he can sleep in the little boy's bed, a very cute, lovely creature, and the boy says, yes, all right, and he climbs into the bed, and then the boy goes, this creature sort of starts to, it's big and blue, with lovely big blue eyes. This was absolutely, before Monsters, Inc. Anyway, he decides to sort of sleep in the boy's bed, sort of snores, big snores, keeps the boy awake, so the boy gets out of bed, goes to his chest of drawers, opens chest of drawers, gets some earmuffs out, takes the earmuffs out, puts them on. It's just about to get, when two more adorable heads pop up out of the drawer and say, can we sleep in your bed tonight? And the boy says, oh, all right. And they climb in and take even more of his bedclothes. And then the boy goes round his room, opening cupboards and looking behind curtains and lampshades, and out of all these places, lovely, adorable creatures emerge. They all want to sleep in the boy's bed, so they all climb into his bed, fall asleep. The boy sleeps on the floor. It wasn't a long story. In fact, the Dutch translator of the book, just a few years ago, said, do you know the Dutch version of your book? I said, no, I've never seen it. He said, translation's an interesting thing. I said, oh, right. He said, in Dutch, it's translated as, can I sleep with you? Different sort of book. Very open-minded, the Dutch. Anyway, it was actually called Mr. Underbed. I took it in to the publisher with the eyebrows, Klaus Pfluger. And he looked at this and he said, yes, this is fine. We will publish it. Now, when I picked myself up off the carpet and sort of dusted myself down, I thought, that's what I've got to do. I've got to go in search of stories. I've got to write my own stories if I can't find anyone to write. If possible, I can maybe sort of, meet a writer, start to sort of maybe imprison them, make them believe that my ideas are theirs, groom them, sort of Stockholm syndrome, get them to write the stuff I want. It's working okay. Anyway, that's how I started. I went in search of stories. And this is why, all these years later, I sit before you as the children's laundrette. So, my wife, Princess Joanna of Norfolk, washed my jeans. I didn't ask her to. I'd actually left them very, very carefully, put away on the bedroom carpet. And she washed them. She washed my jeans. And she came into the studio, bottom of the garden. She said, I thought for a minute that washing machine was broken. And I thought, oh, no, just one of those boring things. She said, no, it was okay. It was making this weird clunking sound. I turned it off. I took your jeans out. I said, I didn't ask you to wash my jeans. She said, I took your jeans out. I looked in the pocket, and you'd left your mobile phone in the pocket. I said, I didn't ask you to wash my jeans. We had one of those conversations. It wasn't pretty. Anyway, I phoned up my mobile phone provider, and I think I'm in this very particular sort of price band. It's the middle-aged man who doesn't understand technology price band. And I phoned up and said, my wife washed my phone. And they said, oh, then no problem, so we'll send you a new phone, the very latest phone, immediately. And I said, really? And they said, oh, yes, you were due an update about 4 years ago. I said, was I? They said, yes, no problem. And literally, I put the phone down, and there was a knock on the door. There was a man with the very latest phone, the very latest magic phone. And, I stood there looking at it thinking, my goodness. It struck me that the phone that my wife had washed was what is technically called a stupid phone. Because what I was holding was a smartphone. Never had a smart, just extraordinary thing, with all amazing Apple's finest, I was looking at this thing. And then my daughter Katie sort of walked past and she said, oh, Dad, that's a nice phone. And I got that feeling of, yeah, it's very cool. Now what do I do with it? And she said, oh, well, Dad, and she just took me on hand. She's very sweet. She said, well, you can like load apps onto it. I said, what are apps? And she said, oh, well, I'll show you, Dad. You can do that. I said, you can use Instagram. I said, what's Instagram? She said, oh, it's this. And she showed me this amazing thing. And then she said, and then you can link it to Facebook. I said, I don't go on Facebook. That's not. I said, well, you could if you just threw it. I said, really? She said, yeah. And then you can go on Tumblr. I said, what the earth is Tumblr? But anyway, she set this thing up. So I could just, through a click of the button, I could take a photo of something and it would appear in these other places. So she set it all up, and I thought it would be rude not to just try it out. So I got my sketchbook out, just a little sketchbook. I always keep one on me. Here's my current one. And I just sort of opened it at a random page. Let's have a look. Just a random page. And I just sort of took my phone, just did a little snap on my phone. And it went to these places. And then I forgot about it. And then the next day, I went to Facebook. I don't use Facebook very often, but I thought I'd see what happens. So I went to Facebook, and someone, somewhere in the world, someone who I'm never going to meet, had sent me a big blue thumb with like underneath it. And I got this warm, fuzzy feeling, just filled up. I thought, oh, that's nice. So I went immediately and took another photo and posted that up, and then someone sent me 2 blue thumbs. And then I sort of did another one, and another one, and then I became, basically, I just trolled the internet for blue thumbs. I was lost from that moment on. And I discovered this amazing thing called social media. And so now I do it all the time. And I sort of, part of what I'm doing, as Children's Laureate, was I thought, why not, as I go around doing the various things I'm doing, why don't I just sort of draw, just keep a little log of what I do each day as Children's Laureate. Here we are. This is the Laureate log. I'm sitting on it. There you go. Thank you. And each day, I'll just Instagram this. It'll go on Facebook, go on Tumblr. I've just discovered Periscope. That's very exciting. And I just thought I would just show you a few pages from my Laureate log. This is volume 4. So I've been through 3 already. And it's just, as I go back, I just sort of have these little experiences. Now, this is me reading. Have I mentioned what a lovely audience you are? You are a lovely audience. Thank you so much. This audience terrifies me. They are 3-year-olds. Three-year-olds with that inscrutability that 3-year-olds have. They just look at you and you don't know what they're thinking. And I went along to my play group. I walked into the situation. I thought, I'm in trouble here. I'm in big trouble, just all these little... And then you start to have a conversation, you say, hello, my name's Chris Riddell, and then all these little sort of people start having their own personal conversation directly back at you. So you're having like sort of 10 conversations all at once, simultaneously. It's extraordinary. And I'd arrived at this playgroup armed with the most amazing thing, a book by Michael Rosen called A Great Big Cuddle. And it's a book of poetry for the very young. I opened this book, I started to read the poems, and they all just stopped their individual conversations and just looked at me. And then they giggled in the right place. And then they laughed at another place. And then I read another poem, and they all made the noises in the poem alongside me. I thought, this book has transformed me into the best nursery school teacher in the world. It's fantastic. I was brilliant. As I went through reading Michael's poems. They couldn't lay a glove on me. It was brilliant. Had them in the back, closed the book. Oh, it all started up again. It was terrible, Magic, absolutely poetry magic. I go to a lot of places. I accept lots of invitations. It's lovely to come to Sheffield. I was asked to go to Plymouth University to talk to the students. I thought, Portsmouth, it's really close. Of course I'll go. And then the day arrived, and I went to go to Portsmouth, and I realised it was Plymouth. And 4.5 hours later, I arrived. They were lovely. I talked for a long, long time there, and then had that lovely, that exciting journey home, 5 hours. 5 hours. I enjoyed that. That'll teach me. Drawing Sats beasties. I like that. Very cathartic, being able sometimes, we're going to get onto this in a little while, very cathartic, actually being sometimes able to draw things that you feel sort of really sort of irritated about. I think it's an excellent idea, isn't it, to have sort of, test our 6-year-olds on complicated grammatical constructions, because they're going to need that in later life, possibly in Tory leadership bids. It's very important to sort of, know what fronted adverbial is. It's really going to help in the arts. So this was me drawing these characters, feeling I'm going to sort of open another page at random. I don't know what I will. 18th of May, I was drawing robots. Obviously, there I am drawing robots. 30th of May, I was drawing a cover for a graphic novel set in Brighton for Queen's Park Books. Drawing metaphorical dog whistles and those who blow them for my Observer cartoon. I think we know Nigel Farage. Making hay at the Hay Festival. Did you see what I did there? There you go. Yeah. So yes, this is me. This is cathartic. Oh, a lovely, lovely sort of event at the Hay Festival. Letterpress. Isn't letterpress wonderful? It's great doing these little sort of prints. I couldn't resist doing a lovely letterpress that said, "Can I have a pea, please, Bob?" Well, she laughed, anyway. And then I went to the RA annual dinner. Have I told you how important I am? Anyway, I went to the RA dinner. It was lovely, and there was a nice young person standing looking at the pictures. I went up and said, so how's your work going? She said, quite well. I won the Turner Prize last year. I love those. It's just inadvertent, casual conversations. It's great. It's lovely. And then I'm spending a delightful day with the wise wizard Gaiman. Neil Gaiman, wonderful writer. I think of him as the wise wizard Gaiman. He arrives, I'm sitting sort of, outside my circular front door, possibly sort of puffing on a sort of interesting shaped pipe. And then Neil rocks up and he says, "Do you fancy going on an adventure?" And I say, "Yeah, great." And I sort of, saddle up my metaphorical mule, Humourous, and off we go. We go to these amazing places. He's always got these amazing things that he writes and he does. And I've just finished illustrating a book he did a while back called Neverwhere, which I always think about when I'm stuck on the London Underground. I always think the possibility is that, Earl's Court will actually turn out to be an earl who's holding court. You never know. I'm going to turn one last page. Let's see, where am I going to go? Oh, here we are. Drawing the BFG, the Big Friendly Genius, Quentin Blake. And this is one of these things. I live in a very meta world now that I've discovered, Instagram and Tumblr and tweets and things. And so now I can get together with people. I can draw live. So this is me drawing live on Periscope, holding my phone while I attempt to draw the wonderful Quentin Blake. And then people can sort of tune in and watch it live. It's an extraordinary world we live in. Drawing William Hogarth at the National Portrait Gallery. What about our children? Hashtag I don't want to leave. We'll get to this. We'll get to this in a moment. So now I think if we can go back to the PowerPoint. Thank you. So I was booked to go up to talk to the National Association for Teaching English at Stratford-upon-Avon on Saturday, and I woke up on Friday thinking, what just happened? What just happened? I went to bed, and the bookies were all saying we were still in Europe, and I woke up and we were out. I thought, what happened? And so then I had to sort of get on a train and travel up, rather mournfully, up Stratford-upon-Avon, and I had my sketchbook with me. This was my Laureate log entry the day before, thinking, oh my goodness. And then I thought, right, I'm going to try and make myself feel a little better using my sketchbook. And this is the thing I always say about sketchbooks, that they're wonderful. Sort of, drawing it's a meditation, it's a catharsis, it's a way of thinking about ideas, thinking things through visually. It's a lovely medium. So I thought, right, I'm feeling miserable. I'm going to try and sort of, channel some of those feelings. Black Friday, yes, oh no. And it's amazing what you find. This comes from, this was quoted in the Financial Times in a letter. I think this is a very interesting quote. We now live in a post-factual democracy. When the facts met the myths, they were as useless as bullets bouncing off the bodies of aliens in an H.G. Wells novel. When Michael Gove said the British people are sick of experts, he was right. But can anybody tell me the last time a prevailing culture of anti-intellectualism has led to anything other than bigotry? It felt nice to draw that. Another Laureate log. This was my entry, a heavy heart eased by the enlightened folk at the National Association of Teaching English conference. And it was a joyful thing. It was a joyful thing to be able to arrive and show them my sketchbook and talk about this, because I think so many of us in the creative industries know that we have suffered a calamity. And we can't, I suppose, be, it's going to take time. It's going to take time to process this. It's going to take time to think about it through properly. It's going to take time to think about how we talk to the younger generation about it. So, no 350 million for the NHS then. Funny that. I saw that bus, but apparently that was completely wrong. Completely wrong. That bit in The Lord of the Rings when the orcs take control of the Shire. I know. That does have a happy ending. Maybe. Come on. The new Churchill. I loved one of the things posted on Facebook. I loved this. It was that press conference the two of them gave. Boris Johnson, well, three, because Gisela Stewart was there. But anyway, these two, sort of Gove and Johnson got up, and then someone had done this little sort of line underneath it, and it's a little sort of conversation. One saying, "Take control of our country." No, you take control. No, you take control. You touched it last. Rise up and save our children's future. Send in the clowns, don't bother, they're here. I love the fact he's still taking his European salary. That's great, isn't it? I love that. Keep calm and, yes, keep calm. Bridge closed until further notice. Yep, that's my children's book side coming out there. Now, today of all days, kick off. We know we're all Welsh, aren't we? if you just want, you want to smile, I recommend it's just going to YouTube, typing in John Redwood singing the national anthem. It's hilarious. It's hilarious. He was Secretary of State for Wales, and he starts. It's wonderful. He's standing there on the podium, surrounded by real Welsh people, and he starts to sing, and he's got these starry eyes, I don't know whether you've noticed. And you can see him as they begin, literally the first syllable, he's thinking, oh dear, and his mouth's moving. And he does the most unconvincing lip sync while his terrified eyes go backwards and forwards like this. And then the best bit, it doesn't last long, it's only about 30 seconds, but the best bit is when he stops and realises everyone knows that he's just moving his lips. He looks like and so he just stops and just looks back. And it's just brilliant. I do recommend it. Whatever happens tonight, just cheer yourself up. No man is an island entire of itself. Every man is a piece of the continent, a part of the main. If a clod be washed away by the sea, Europe is the less. As well as if a promontory were, as well as if a manor of thy friends or thine own were. Any man's death diminishes me, because I am involved in mankind, and therefore never send to know for whom the bell tolls. It tolls for thee. Poetry can soothe the soul. See you on Monday, Boris. And then I felt it was one of these odd things. And again, social media, this is part of, in a sense, maybe making connections, the way that we can sort of, sometimes vent our feelings, sometimes, feel. This was just a sort of diary entry. I mean, I keep a work log and whatever, and this was a diary entry, and I just sort of copied it out and posted it up. The dust of Thursday's disaster is still settling like a shroud over everything decent and forward-looking in this country. The internal politics of the Tory party have wrecked the future of generations to come, and the bigots and xenophobes are trying not to crow as they urge unity and calm. The false prospectus of the Leave campaign is unravelling in front of horrified and embarrassed onlookers, and the markets are going to crucify the lot of us on Monday morning. Well, thank goodness that's not quite happened, but it could yet. I'm going to the bottom of my garden to draw and write stories and try not to think about it all for a while. Then perhaps we can begin the process of thinking again about this self-induced right-wing calamity. Meanwhile, a carnival of political grotesques dance across our screens, pretending that their lies have not been laid bare and continuing their contrived rictus of statesmanship and amid the hollow cheers and growing boos. Thank you. Thank you. Going to my happy place for the afternoon, drawing and writing stories. There. So there I am, disappearing into the bushes. I do work at the bottom of my garden. I don't just lurk there, honestly. Well, thank you. Now I thought, let me just check. There's a lovely... Oh, look, it's glowing red, which means I should have started questions at least 5 minutes ago. Right. I'm going to be told how many questions I can get through, and Sue is going to help me in this process. I'm going to use my extremely sharp pencils to attempt to answer any questions you might have in the medium of interpretive with this pencil, with a charcoal pencil.
Well, this is going to be interesting. Who's got a really challenging question? First of all, thank you very much, Chris. Absolutely.
Thank you.
It's just so lovely to come to something which is where this is kind of calm, to say so much, but it's just the kind of, it's very therapeutic, isn't it? Just to kind of have this kind of calm atmosphere while Chris draws and talks. Brilliant. Questions which Chris has said he will answer in drawing. So who can think up a really challenging question which will really test Chris's ability to answer in the medium of art?
Or possibly here. Quite an easy question.
Gentleman here, thank you.
Sorry, so you asked me a hard one, so I've got a hard one. What's the plan post-Brexit?
Yeah.
That's an easy one.
It is actually a very easy one, yes. Why why are his eyebrows always right at the top of his...
Is that the blue monster?
Another question.
Another question. Brilliant. Thank you very much indeed. Lady here with the glasses.
What's next for Tony?
Oh my God.
I know, wish fulfillment, I know, but anyway. Yeah.
Brilliant. Well, that's sorted out the world of politics. And has anyone got a completely different question? Gentleman just here on the end with the glasses. Thank you.
Do you know, I think question time would be much more lively if it was illustrated.
So, an easy question, I suppose. My parents are Portuguese. I was born in Montreal. So tonight, who will win, Portugal or Wales?
This is a very tricky one. I think this should be actually the Welsh mascot, you know. That actually looks vaguely obscene, I know. It's a prediction, you know.
Nothing if not versatile. Yes, I think, is that Melissa up there? I can see.
If your dog became visible, what would it look like?
Well, that's an easy one, because Rosie wasn't always invisible. She was once visible. I know. Will you say that? Rosie was a long-haired Jack Russell with very, very tiny legs.
Oh.
And she looked like a puppy all her life. Little ginger eyebrows. And little children would see Rosie, little Rosie, all through her life, and they'd go, "Puppy, puppy," and they'd run up to Rosie, and Rosie was the most foul-tempered dog in the world. Absolutely appalling temperament, you know. She used to, sometimes she would climb up onto my lap, lie back. She had a great big tummy. She'd lie back, legs in the air. I would reach to just stroke her tummy, and she'd snap at me. You know, that's the kind of dog she was. She was a liability. And also, I mean, this is not Rosie's fault, but I always felt that you know, living in Brighton as a sort of, you know, middle-aged man walking in the park, Rosie wasn't my ideal sort of dog, a very tiny dog going for a walk through the park. Always sort of felt a little bit embarrassed by Rosie. And I think Rosie's finest moment happened at Katie's 5th birthday party when we were in the garden, party games, it was lovely, and then one of the little girls said, "Oh, look, Rosie's playing with a squirrel." And then Rosie ate a baby squirrel in front of everyone's eyes, and then quite literally sort of ran past the screaming children with the tail hanging out of her. Moment I'll never forget. So if Rosie was visible, bless her, she no longer with us, but if she was visible, she would have a small squirrel's tail hanging out of her mouth.
It's a wonderful story, thank you. Yes, on the end of the row there. Thank you very much.
Hello. This requires rewriting the history of technologies. It might be awkward. If when you were in that church pew when you were young and your mother had given you an iPad and not a pen and paper, what do you think would have become of you? What do you think you would have become?
That's all technology. It's interesting. Now, I often think, sort of technology is the sort of, it's just a tool, isn't it? It's a tool. I always think of this when I see sort of students showing me their work and what they've been working on. The Daily Telegraph once referred to me in a review as defiantly non-digital. And I'm not defiant at all. I'm just incompetent. I just don't have the training. I'm just no good at all these brilliant things. And I've now got to this extraordinary stage where sometimes students will come up to me and say, what brushes do you use? And I go, well, I use a Sapel, Kolinsky Sapel, San Rafael, made out of small alpine animals, that sort of give up their lives so I can... They said, no, what digital brushes do you use? And I'm lost. I'm completely lost. I don't know how to do Photoshop or anything like that. And so now designers will come up to me and said, "You've just sent in some artwork for your latest book." I said, "Yes." They said, "No, but it was real artwork. We don't get artwork anymore. It's all digital files." I say, "What?" Anyway, I've now reached this extraordinary sort of point where I am so unfashionable that I'm fashionable. I love this. There's a sort of return to craft. So I think the pencil and the iPad are friends. They can live together in our digital world. I think the amazing things that are done on iPads and the drawings that are done, the drawing apps that you can get, are amazing. They're wonderful. And I think they are just tools. These are tools that we can use creatively. The important thing, I think, is how we think creatively. And that's where the sort of sketchbook comes in. That's the place where we can exercise our great ideas. Now, for instance, in my latest book that I'm thinking about, it's called Goth Girl and the Sinister Symphony. I thought it would be interesting if one of the characters arrives in a flying carriage, horse and carriage, possibly Pegasus, running. And I thought I would call it Clippy Cloppy Bang Bang. Anyway, I don't know where I get my ideas from, honestly. I'm full of ideas. Oh, I went to Katie's graduation, Manchester School of Art. I was so proud. Katie said, when I talked to the tutors, and she said, Dad, it's not all about you, It's tough, she's tough.
Oh, brilliant. How are we doing for time? Yes, lady here.
When you spoke about your house and the hedge earlier on that had the disease, I actually have a neighbour who has a very similar smelling bush, and I wonder if you could help me with breaching the subject.
I like this, because I think this is a sort of gardener's question time moment. And so the sort of coda to my sick hedge story is that I enjoy telling that story because, quite frankly, it makes me laugh when I say cat's pee. So anyway, I was sort of talking about this, at the Cheltenham festival. It was lovely. Cheltenham's lovely. I sort of gave that talk. And I was giving this lovely talk, and then afterwards at the signing queue, this man came up and said, I'm actually one of the panelists at Gardener's Question Time, and I can tell you exactly what your hedge had, and then he wrote it down for me. And it begins with an S, and it's some complicated fungal disease. And he said it does, in fact, smell Gatsby. You're absolutely right. So I got it from the expert.
Brilliant. Thank you. I think we've got time for one more question. So, yes, is it Roz? Yeah, the back there.
Okay, this is a big one, and you can interpret this whichever way you want, but
okay.
What does the future look like?
What does the future look like? My goodness.
Good luck.
That's great.
Brilliant.
It'll all be all right in the end, won't it? I'm sure. And I think that's what, I suppose, as creative people, we've got to believe that. We've got to go forward, and we've got to keep writing stories. We've got to keep making great sort of films and TV programs and getting stories out there and, delivering the good stuff. We can't let the current sort of crop of politicians shape our future any more than they're going to. So, yes, let's keep strong and keep creative.
Thank you very much, Chris. Your warmth and your wisdom and your humour is just what we need at the moment, and I think you'll agree with me. It's been an absolutely brilliant creative keynote. It couldn't have been more creative, and we're very, very grateful to you. This is a little present from us from Sheffield.
Thank you.
And I think there's a note on that side which explains how and why it's from Sheffield. But but thank you very, very much indeed. I'm sure you will all agree it's been a great keynote. Thank you.
Thank you. Standing up, I love that. I'm getting a little embarrassed.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon.
Sue, my pleasure.
Thank you. Thank you all very much.